Hey, it's Chris. So, 2024 is almost done. There are going to be lists populating everywhere. The best of 2024. The best of 2024. But do you think you know what the best of 2024 is? I'm honestly still making up my mind right now. I'm still trying to get plays in of a few games that I haven't yet been able to get to the table enough to give a judgment. But nonetheless, we're going to predict. These are all the nominees. These are, about 25 games that could be making a lot of lists. My brief thoughts on them, I'm tier ranking them on my own personal preference, as well as how likely I think they are to actually have a significant chance of ending up on a lot of lists / winning. Ooh, it's going to be spicy. You know it's going to be good. Let's go. So like I said, I am taking all of the games that I think are going to be on people's lists, letting them out and seeing where they fall on your tier ranking. And then, a month, 3 months from now, how right was I? Horribly wrong. Well, I mean, again, I'm not going to be right here, folks. This is subjective. This is opinionated. This is going to make people, think about things. How do you rank them? Let's go. I've got a bunch of games here. Way too many, but we're talking about them anyway. One at a time, me ranking them, showing you my preference, showing you what I think is going to go where, right? We got the heavies, we got the fillers, we got the Euros, we got the worker placements, we got the Amerithrashes, we got everything in between. And we're going to say like wide availability in 2024. Not like you're sneaking in at the tail end of things and maybe you got a copy of Fear of the Unknown, Cthulhu Death May Die while the rest of us are waiting. Something like that, right? Like from years past with Evenfall, which again is on this list as well. But, kind of was also on the end of 2023's because a few people snuck it over in Essen. And he says that because he actually forgot to add Evenfall, so I just added it there as a whole. So, you know what? Let's just go in no complete order because, let's go with the heavyweights first, right? You can see Arcs is sitting right here. Arcs is sitting here. Where do you think Arcs is going to be? I mean, Arcs is going to be between an S tier and an A tier, folks. A lot of people are going to have Arcs on the top of the list. Now, if I personally was doing it, I probably wouldn't even be ranking Arcs at this point because I don't have enough plays in to tell you. I don't have enough campaign in to tell you. I don't have enough multiplayer to tell you. Is it going to be better at 3 and 4 rather than your preference at 2? I could be putting it down here right now. I'm just trolling you at this point. It's going to be up here. It's going to be on a ton of people's top lists. I don't know if it's going to end up there for me at all, but it seems to be a love it or frickin' hate it game in that way. Without further ado, right? Let's go head to head. Space Battler Worker Placement. You know what? Andromeda's Edge. Again, you saw the videos, you saw the content. Best game ever in the history of this past week with both Arcs and Andromeda's Edge, right? And so that begs the question then. Are enough people going to be interested? Were enough people getting Andromeda's Edge? Or is that too niche within a niche? I mean, you can make the at least the argument with Arcs, right? Arcs seemingly appeals to a lot more people outside of the particular core audience that Leader has attracted with Oath and Root. I'm not sure Andromeda's Edge has this huge, wider, spanning reach outside of like your Dwellings of Elderville-ish core audience. Slightly review heavy, yeah. Content creator side, media side of things for sure. But general population? So that's why I'd actually argue Andromeda's Edge, I think, is actually going to be a B. I mean, I think it's going to end up on a lot of people's lists, but I don't think it's going to end up a lot of people's non-solo lists or all lists. Because I think that's the other thing I'll say with this as a whole, is that when you're looking at all of the games I have down there on the image when we pop back up in a second, like there's a reason I have about 27 games on there, is because I think the breadth, deep wise this year is absolutely the best I have ever seen. Truth be told, top to bottom. When they talk about like football conferences or basketball conferences in your sports, right? You have like the top heavies, we'll use the football, for example, not American football, soccer. They talk about the Premier League, right? Premier League is super top heavy. You've got your Manchester Cities, your Liverpools, your Arsenals, and then you've kind of got a little bit of everyone else. But they make the argument when you talk about the Premier League compared to La Liga or the Bundesliga or anything else, that the top-ish are overall deeper than the top maybe 10 of one of the other leagues. And that's what I'm looking at here. But then the tricky part is that the top whatever here are also hugely broadly different. Again, let's just stay with the super heavies, right? Lord of the Rings and Duel for Middle-earth. Again, I think that's guaranteed to be in a ton of stuff. I had my review. I freaking loved it. I think a lot of people are loving it. It's skyrocketing up the charts for a reason. I mean, I would make the argument right now, those two are hands down the favorite in terms of the betting, if you will, of who's going to get what. The only other thing that's even going to come close is Slay the freaking Spire. But I'll be honest, I worry about Slay the Spire not showing up on as many lists because this side of things, media-wise, why I think a lot of these games are on this list and why some also won't be on as many is because our hobby, in general speak, on a weekly basis, on the content media side of things, on the board game geek side of things, is a Johnny, what have you done for me lately? And Slay the Spire was like, I don't know, it was like 47 different hype cycles ago, if you will, 47 weeks maybe, if you will, at the beginning of the freaking year of 2024. And it seems like a vast amount of people everywhere don't remember what happened 6 months ago, let alone a year ago or anything along those lines, right? Either slightly before or slightly after this video, I'm going to be having a look back even at like 3 months ago of the Gen Con Essen releases and how they've changed and how the hype around them has already way cooled off on a significant portion of them that you were so eager and clamoring to get at that time. And I think Slay the Spire as a deck building, somehow you managed to port this solo game onto the tabletop and not make you lose the essence of what it was, but still making it, you know, just a fun experience without too much upkeep is there. But are you going to remember it come this many months ago on the reviewer hype cycle side of things? Right alongside of that, this was the beginning of 2024. Chris, was it even the 2020? Yeah, it was. It was the freaking hardest game to get for the first half of the year, and that's Harmonies. Harmonies is the only other thing that should be up there, in my opinion, as the S tier. These are locks to be on a huge amount of lists. And again, if the last two of these are not on people's lists, it's because no one wanted to pay $100 for Slay the Spire, or, right, or people aren't remembering what they played at the beginning of the year. That's why I log-ish some of my stuff. Not to necessarily do play counts, but to remind me, when did I play what? And that's the only way I sometimes can clarify, what did I play in December? What did I play in November? Was that October or September? I don't really remember. This clarifies it for me. So those are the absolute freaking locks whatsoever. No qualms about it. Then we're getting down a notch. Then it's going to be even more divisive. What do you have a personal stock in, a personal preference in? After this S tier, though, this is where it's really going to get divisive because it's going to be a lot more subjective, right? This is the part where I'm going to put out a lot of my opinions and tell you how right and wrong, well, you are and I am at the same time. So let's go. Easy A tier listing for me, personally speaking, Leviathan Wilds. I think this, along with Slay the Spire, are going to be hand in hand vying for the best cooperative games of the year. No questions, no doubt whatsoever. If it's not, again, it's because you didn't play it. And I'm going to put a whole nother video probably, you know, going the end of this month or even January of 2025 saying these games might have made my list, or these are the games that I just didn't play from 2024 and could be good, but no freaking clue, because even on my point of doing this, when I'm talking to you guys, folks, I have like half these games at most, or I've played a good portion of these games, which is an aberration this year compared to the last couple years, right? Like, I still haven't played Sky Team from last year. I still haven't played White Castle from last year. There is this overarching tendency to be like, well, you get everything sent to you for free. You just might not like that game. That's why you didn't put it on your list. Or, you know what? I still buy a ton of games, folks. I still do, right? I get stuff sent to me, yeah. But you know, everything vies for space, time, and competition in front of the camera as well. Trying to decide frickin' what goes next, right? Because I only have so much time and effort that I can handle with that aspect too. But anyway, speaking of a mid-video break, go support me on Patreon. Help me, because I've helped you not FOMO on some of these games, or on my don't back it or my don't buy it at retail. Instead of spending that extra $50 or $70, you could support me on Patreon on a monthly basis. Anyway, back to the tier ranking. Then I think another huge sleeper hit from the beginning of the year, probably right up there with Leviathan and Slay the Spire, but accessibility is Primal. I think Primal is fan-forking-tastic. Accessibility from a price point and a battle crawler standpoint, I give them a lot of kudos. I have yet to have my review out at the time of me filming this. So again, that's one of those I need to get done before the end of the year and hopefully will be out. So that is up there. The other craziness that's just going to go with this situation of the ones that I can say definitively a little bit more of where they're going, Worldspanner Factions, I think is your sleeper hit. I think that's going to fall right in here at the end of your A- for me. It takes the previous Duel of Ages, revamps it, refreshes it, and brings it back to light. And you know me, in like sort of a Wiz War style chaos, I absolutely love that aspect of things. But that's also one of those games that like doesn't have wide mass appeal. It didn't have wide mass selling. It only raised like $200,000 in crowdfunding, which again, freaking $200,000, folks, is still freaking amazing. We're just blinded and have these rose-colored goggles on nowadays. If things don't get $1 million, then it's not good, folks. Tons of games are under 100,000. Remember. Spirit Island raised like $100,000 its first time on crowdfunding. So anyone that associates funding with how good a game is clearly not paying attention to anything but the sheer monetary value, the marketing style of things, or Board Game Geek rankings, which are highly, highly disproportionately not going to be accurate for what you actually necessarily freaking like. Then Cascadero for me. Cascadero is going to be another A-1. I love this Nizia tile layer. I called my shot when Bitewing sent it to me and I covered it for the crowdfunding campaign. I said, you guys are going to love this. This is going to be an amazing game. Throw money at it like I was just doing there. And it's going to be on my list next year. If this is your vibe, this is your freaking vibe. This game is absolutely fantastic. It stands separate than the other ones that, the doctor has put out there. And I have no qualms about saying I would love to play this game any freaking time. It might be now my more potentially, you know what? Actually, I take that back. It's not going to be my potential go-to. I still prefer Babylon. It's a little bit more straightforward for folks that aren't used to that style. But boy, howdy, is it going to be the next in the line. You know what? Let's go to the Euro side of things, right? I've done enough of Amerithrash. I'm all over the place there. Let's go, because there's a ton of games that have gotten hype, couple that haven't gotten a whole lot of hype, and they're falling in between. Unconscious Mind is gonna be, right below Andromeda's Edge. I think a lot of people really, really like it. Fantasia did a great job with that, but I don't see anyone clamoring it as the best game of the year. The top 3 or 4 worker placements, absolutely. But the best, that's why I'd have to rank it there. I'd argue that even Wondrous Creatures is going to fall somewhere right in here too. I'd make the argument even more so potentially than Andromeda's Edge, because I see people trying to get Wondrous Creatures and can't get it, as opposed to getting rid of Andromeda's Edge, right? And so that's a poor test of the market with a very, very significant selection bias there, but it's kind of true. And it is doing something unique. Bad Comment is rocketing their status up there for me in terms of indie publishers and designers to be aware of from that aspect. I like the worker placement with the asymmetry. I like the changing of the modular boards, the sort of grid-based selection system of when you put it down, you gather like everything around it that it touches. I think it's doing creative things, and you know what? Creative doesn't always pan out, but in Wondrous Creatures, it really has. Then Civolution. I can't speak to Civolution, right? Haven't played it. Love to consider it from a Feldian aspect, once I've got 3 hours to spare on a weekly basis. I'm looking at you, and Trespass Odyssey. Anyway, and so I see people liking it. I don't see a lot of people loving it. So I'm going to put it right there equal to Unconscious Mind. And that's kind of going along with Fromage as well. From R2I games, Fromage is sort of flying under the radar. I'd say or argue I've heard more really good surprising things out of Fromage. I think a lot of people poo-pooed that. I don't want to play a game that talks about cheese. But again, right? It's doing something unique with the rotating board, putting your workers in each area, having the cheese then placed in a certain direction that indicates how many more turns before your worker comes back to you. They're coming out with the upcoming Formaggio, a re-implementation of the same design with completely different worker placement aspects to go along with it. And so they clearly see it as a hit if they're putting basically a 2.0 different version of it out there with some changes. So again, I would argue that that'd probably be another sleeper hit on this list that I don't think people were expecting. But again, your boy called it. Like, my channel doesn't cover a whole lot of that, but I like covering stuff that I like. Right? Woo! My channel. Next game. The other one is SETI. Again, I have no clue where SETI's going to fall. Again, I'm not sure if this is one of those Essen flash in the pans or just the intense, heavier nature of it as a whole is going to lend it from that aspect. The other sleeper hit that I have to put out there is Menifer. I've seen Menifer getting a couple under the radar mentions, but this one, again, is probably the least widely available, I think, on this list in terms of just who can get it right now. I think it's mostly actually not even in North America. So that might make it a little bit of a not contender as a whole. So I should probably even put that down there for D, but you heard it here that at least we were talking about it and mentioning it. That is a good majority of the Euros or the heavier worker placement games. Let's go back to the light side of things, right? The gang. Again, the gang is going to be very divisive. I would personally rank the gang higher. I think it's going to be sitting down here with SETI, just because you're either going to love the poker, the mind, the game style aspect that it's got going on, or it's going to fall completely flat with you from that aspect. Then again, similar with Faraway, I like Faraway. I'm not sure it's game of the year contender for me. I'm not sure it's going to make my top 10, not because I don't like it as much as I thought I was going to, or I did earlier in the year, but just because look at all of these other games that I would argue that I just like freaking more. And that's probably the argument I was kind of trying to make in a slightly different way, if you want, earlier in the video, saying, you know what, the breadth and the depth of these games that I like is just tremendous, right? I could probably fill out a top 20 or 25 for this year. And 11 through 25 would be probably maybe even slightly more difficult than the top like 6 or 8. So that is truly impressive because I like Faraway a lot. I like the next game we'll talk about here in a second a lot. But the problem is I've just run into more games as the year has gone on that I like freaking more. And one or two that I haven't gotten yet that I would love freaking the most. Yeah, where the F and deuce is my Marvel United Multiverse pledge? Still missing it, won't get it. So yeah, right, Veil of Eternity. I'm actually going to give Veil of Eternity the edge over a couple of these other ones. Personally speaking, for me, I'd actually put it like up here in this tier. And I want to get the Artifacts expansion. I think it's that impressive that the Artifacts expansion could be good. Then, you know what? Let's stick with the lighter style of things, Trick Takers. Me personally, Trick Takers is up here. I really think Trick Takers. That's not going to be on anyone else's list this year, folks. It's an asymmetric trick-taking route style game with ways that you can win condition and gain points that are all unique and that you have to choose a different one each round. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But if you want to know more, I also covered it in a review on the channel earlier this year. Then Rebel Princess. Again, it's hearts with Trump and slightly different asymmetric powers. So I don't think it's going to be making a ton of people's lists, but I think it's at least on the lists in general to be aware of. And I love Hearts, and this is a game I could actually play with a lot of my family, in-laws, and my own parents. And so that's why it's also on the list in that regard. Let's just go back and do Evenfall as well. Evenfall is a tremendous engine builder. When the Crystal Path becomes more widely available, it will not almost certainly, but there's a high chance that it's going to end up in my collection as a whole. So I have to at least put that out there. And then the most surprising set collection engine build game of the year easily in this regard is Let's Go to Japan. I would make the argument that this overachieved. I think this is going to be a surprise on a lot of people's lists if you weren't familiar with it. AEG has an absolutely smashing hit on there. There's a lot of decision making that goes into it in this very, very simple setup of over your 7 days where you're slowly laying out these cards in a 3 tableau system where they're trying to match up as much as possible, both between location and symbology, as well as symbology of the days themselves and the overarching keeping you happy, sad, and not trying to travel back and forth between the two locations too much to lose victory points. I wouldn't mind the little expansion to go along with it, which tends to be more of the AEG thing as well, or flat out game situation combo right there with like the Cascadia Rollings, which again, like didn't make this list, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people kind of have it on their list as well. So You know, don't be shocked if that shows up, I guess is what I'm saying. And then we go back to the sort of medium heavy stuff here. Some of this stuff is out widely available. Some of this stuff has gotten a little bit of hotness. Some of this stuff hasn't. Again, Endeavor Deep Sea, I'm going to throw that right in here because I think I said that as well when it came out last year. I think a lot of people are liking this. A lot of people are picking it up on the secondary market. A lot of people are clamoring for the deluxe edition because it's that much better than the original. It just is, right? I like the theme better, the mechanical approach, the, you know, building up your workers in that way that it's got, just the asymmetry, competitive, cooperative solo. I'm very happy with that one. Again, just like Cascadero, the product that I had in front of me as a prototype was very reflective of how good the end product was going to be. And sometimes it's one of those games, just like with Cascadero in that same sense. I played it and I said, people are freaking gonna love this game, right? It's not gonna be for everybody, but it's gonna be overwhelmingly very, very freaking well received. Sort of like one of the games behind me on the shelf that is yet to be released that I think people are going to like too. Tidal Blades 2 got the Dice Tower Seal of Excellence. I know people are liking it from a dungeon crawl standpoint. It's coming at the tail end of the year. I don't think people are going to have a lot of time to play through it. So I think it's going to be potentially on a couple lists, but I'm not sure where it's going to fall. I know people are really liking the grid tableau system. I had a chance again to try out the prototype hands-on during the campaign. Yeah, it's clever with your allocation in the rows and the columns in order to, you know, take your actions and then not just your slog them out style on the map in the first place. There's a lot going on, but it does utilize my more preferred, you know, crawl mechanism of the spiral bound notebooks right now. So it's got a lot of things going for it. And it's probably another one of those where kind of under the radar-ish, even though it really shouldn't be from Druid City, but kind of is at the same time, weirdly enough. And we're getting to the end here. You may or may not be familiar with these last symbols. Dead Cells. Again, people are really liking it for the port that it is. I'm not sure it's gotten quite the acclaim or quite the interest from Slay the Spire, though. So I'm going to make the argument that it's probably going to fall somewhere in the C category in terms of desire. And the exclusives aren't really that much. 1 extra character and like 3 extra cards weapon-wise. So it's not really a lose-lose, so you're fine at retail. Then Burning Banners as just more of an overarching, you know, 3+ hour skirmish style game. It's going to be fantastic if you are the niche within a niche within a niche within a niche that can get that played and played repeatedly from analysis paralysis side of things. Similarly, I love the idea of a Just for Robin Hood, but as a GMT game, 2-player intro level style game, I think it's going to fall right in that category. And very similar with Red Dust Rebellion, I think it's very, very good from a GMT as an intro to the coin series. But I don't think it's going to make it any more accessible from that aspect to a lot of people like myself who aren't looking for coin or wargaming in that sense. So that would be my only issue. And you know what? We'll move Menifer down there as a final thought. Okay, actually, truth be told, I forgot a couple. So we added a couple here at the end. So we're well over 30 games now at this point. Like I ranted about earlier in the video, Marvel Multiverse should be an A tier. It should be right up there with me, but I don't have it. I'm probably not going to have it before the end of the year. So it's kind of hard to rank a game that you've never gotten. So you know what? I have to do that, even though realistically, again, it's going to be up here for me, right? Creature Caravan as well from Red Raven. More of your multiplayer solitaire engine build combo chaining card driven game, which didn't raise a ton of money, was combined with the Islebound Emerald edition when it came over in GameFound and has completely flown under the radar. The only thing I have negatively to say is that if you're looking for the mini expansion, apparently that's not going to be out until like Q3 of 2025, which I always find weird when people do that so differently in terms of release dates. But I hear really good things about this. And so, you know, this is going to be right at the B+ sort of A- realm of things, you know. So, whoops, grab Wondrous Creatures there instead, but that's where I'm going to put it. Then Ezra and Nehemiah from Garphill. I can't tell the Garphill games apart. They're all heavy. They're all great. Which one is for you? No clue. It's going to fall even under an even fall there for me. And then Spectral, Bitewing Games. Again, very, very classically different deduction style game. If you like deduction, meta, playgroup, social dynamic games, this is fantastic. If you don't like that whatsoever, it's going to fail for you. So I think that's why we kind of got to put it down here, essentially, unfortunately. And then special shout out, Nawali here, reprint on Kickstarter. This Aztec-based, head-to-head, asymmetric, lane dueling, drafting card style of things, kind of like a Sky Tier Horde, only just head-to-head with 3 different lanes as you combine your creatures, make them stronger, and mutate them with iconography that doesn't make sense until you've played the game half a dozen times. We're going to set it right in there, because I think it's a freaking good game. I think you need to know about it, but I don't think it's going to change your mind if you don't like those mechanics as a whole. But yeah, it's freaking fun for me. Review to come. So what do you think of the end rankings, and where do you think things are going to end up? What am I missing off of this list? You know, I guarantee this isn't comprehensive, because you have people like me throwing in games like Trick Takers or Nawali and things like that, right? That are amazing. Or you have games that sort of fell in between the cracks, right? These are all new releases of 2024. I'm looking at Tir Nanag behind the camera there as a great release. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, people are throwing out a few things like even like a Windmill Valley, if you will. But overarchingly, I don't see a lot of people throwing it there. So I said, no, I don't think it's going to end up there either. So there you go. 2024's predictions. Where am I going to end up on those lists? Which of those are going to end up on mine, and where? Well, tune in, subscribe, find out, and we'll go from there. Also, my Patreon folks, we're doing a little bit of more weekly-ish content, give you at least my sleeper pick or my pick of the week or my insight into something else crowdfunding-wise, especially if you're a crowdfunding junkie. It might behoove you to sign up and contribute or help me out over there. That's all I got. Shilling twice in one video. I actually remembered to do it for once. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Peace out.